September 11th, 2021. Mary Louise Conley's experience with 9/11. I was taking external independent auditor with John McEldowney at the University of North Florida late in life, right? Some people say, well, you're going to get a master's in accounting, you're going to get a CPA, my aunt. Yeah, it was too late. When they told me I had to take some of the same courses I'd already taken from the same book, Weissett, and I said, no, that's okay. But anyway, I was taking, April Kidd and I decided if the revenue agents could have 36 hours of accounting, I was dang ass going to get 36 hours, even if it never meant anything. It meant something to me to know that I was able to do 36 hours in business and accounting. So I would go to UNF in the evenings. There was a club, a health club at Baptist on the south bank of the river. And my doctor said, you could go there and get a discount. And it was very cheap. It was like $20 a month. And they had, stair steppers. It was cardiology. But anyway, they had stair steppers and doctors and nurses and the clients. And there was a slim life or something, trim life or something. I took that course and I was working out there. They had rowing machines, stair steppers, treadmills, bicycles. So anyway, I said, well, I'm a member. I'll park over here. So the 2 nights I would go to UNF, University of North Florida, I'd park over there because I did not like driving down Beach Boulevard and St. John's Bluff, and the traffic was terrible. And the further out you got, if you got gas, you realize these people are pretty rough out here. It's a rough driving. It's rough a motorcycle hit by a dump truck. Okay, not good. So I said, no, I'll just ride the bus because the bus would pick you up right over in San Marco and take you on out there. You'd go by the junior college, and then you would go on over on Maidenform, strangely, and Hodges, and you go back in the backside of UNF. So anyway, here's the way it began. It was morning time. I was talking to Connie. I did the incoming mail for everybody. I was a clerical at that time. And I would assign the cases depending on if they were field audit or office audit. Difference in level of examination. So field audit, office audit, I'm bringing cases in. At that time, I can't remember the slim black guy's name, and Gary were working the bankruptcy cases, and Gary liked to listen to his radio with a headset. He had an AM/FM radio. And our managers, strangely, were in Washington. An annual seminar. All the upper management was in Washington. On the upper floors of our building, we had the Army Corps of Engineering, which would do dredging and things of this nature. It was on the top 9 or 10 floors. They had a television, a standard-sized television on a pole up there, and that was it. Radios and television. There was no internet. I don't think the phones did internet at that time. There may have been mobile phones. No, I don't even think there were mobile phones. And our computers sure didn't let us have internet. We had appeals, we had AMDIS, we had master file, Pro had, problem resolution branch, on and on. Anyway, Gary said a plane had struck one of the Twin Towers, and he came over and he said, a plane. But at that moment, I thought biplane, like, how sometimes people fly helicopters or small planes and visit New York that way as part of the Fly New York or something, tourist plane. And, I said, that's bad, but, I said, oh, that's gross, hope it didn't fly into the offices. And then we're talking and doing our work. And then, I don't know if it was 20 or 40 minutes later, he said a second plane had flown into it. Dan was acting manager. Karen Von Donsel was there, a very brilliant woman. She went from clerk all the way to GS13. She knew a lady in New York, Portia, who later died of breast cancer, and she was in a building 5 or something. We had the head of the appeals division was in New York. Also, I might mention the Security Exchange Commission was in one of those buildings, which was part of the course I was taking on independent external auditor with John McEldowney. We went over some of the duties and responsibilities and dictates of the Security Exchange Commission, how it functioned. And it also had, sometimes it would have cases, in violation of Security Exchange Commission sometimes. Anyway, so I was taking that course, and then I'd say the office was all stirred up now. 2 buildings, 2 planes had hit the Twin Towers. I wasn't familiar with what the Twin Towers were. Karen apparently had been touring New York and knew what she's shocked looking, went pale. And then Joyce was secretary, and we're trying to determine, well, how many people were in that building, because they said it was on fire, and there was gas fumes and stuff. And I said, well, and we determined in our mind, and I don't know how we figured this out. We figured about 30,000 people or something. Anyway, I think I sat and tried to etch out how many per floor. There were 110 floors, and we were trying to figure it out. And then I'm over by at that time, Connie, another clerk, had gotten her radio working. Now Karen's standing behind us, and I said, and she went back to talk to Dan, because she was like almost management herself. And I went and told her, I said, apparently the girders got so hot, which they weren't really girders, they were aluminum and string. They were suspension, a type of suspension building. It was kind of novel at the time. But anyway, I told her, I said, apparently the upper floors were so hot, they began to pancake down, and one of the entire structures has crashed to the ground. I said it pancaked to the ground, and she just looked, oh my God, Well, we didn't know at the time. The majority of the people somehow managed to get out. I remember where there were like 3 guys on an elevator, and one of the guys was an IT person, or he was a cook or something odd. He had some kind of tool with him, but it wasn't the appropriate tool, but he managed to, the elevator stopped maybe 2 feet from the floor. And there were 3 guys in there, I think, and they managed to somehow wedge that knife, IT panel, whatever. They managed to wedge it between the doors. And if one of them stood there, elbow and back to it, the other 2 could squeeze their way out. And I think the black guy may have had not an injury, but he had a health issue. But anyway, they all 3 of them managed to wedge their way out, and they were below, so they were able to get in the stairwell and get out. If they stayed in that, the elevator wasn't functioning, but they managed to get that door open somehow. And I remember they had a tool, but it was like a lampshade. I don't know what it was, some weird back panel of a computer, something strange. And he managed to get it in there and wedge it open. Strange things. Anyway, so we're under attack. Somebody said something has happened at the State Department. There was a panel truck. People were leaving the White House. It was chaos. We are under attack. We are under attack. So now our directions, Dan is looking at about 11 o'clock. We don't know what to do. The Colonel Connell up in the Army Corps says the building must be evacuated. We are closing down the building at 11 o'clock. So I'm stubborn. And I think, okay, well, I've got class tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and start riding out. I go to the Hub, which is center downtown, State Street, and get on the bus, and I'm sitting in the back. There's a black guy, Malcolm X, right? There's a black guy with glasses talking, and he says, well, I don't know if it's related, but on September 9th, somebody shot the leader in Afghanistan, Omar or somebody, and they had a fake camera that had a gun in it instead of a camera. They told him it was a photo op, but then in reality, they shot him in a tent or something. He said, I wonder if that's related. I wish I was in the CIA, and on he went. And then we go out to beach, I think over one of the tall bridges, and we went out to Beach Boulevard, and I noticed the cars were leaving the junior college campus, because we had to circle around there first before we went to UNF. And I noticed the cars were leaving instead of going in, and the bus driver said something. We went to UNF, and I said, well, if the campus was closing down, and I told him, I said, well, can I run in and use the bathroom real quick, because I need to ride back with you to get to Baptist or something. And he let me run in one of the halls and use the one of the ladies' room out there. And I got back on. There were very few people. I had my accounting book, and I made it to the Baptist, and it was just, you're shocked. You don't know what's going on. And I think by then it was about 5 o'clock, and I think the grocery stores and everything was shutting down. I had like $3.44. So I ran into a convenience store. I had nothing at home to eat. I didn't plan my meals very well back then, by the way. So I had $3.44, and somehow I managed to get hot dogs and a loaf and either a loaf of cheap bread or some kind of rolls or something. I managed to just have enough. I don't know if I even had any mustard or ketchup at home. So I'm having hot dogs for dinner. That was my dinner during 9/11. So anyway, Dan Rather's on TV. And then later that evening, Building 5, which wasn't 100 floors, but I think it might have been like 30 or 20 or 30 floors. And the mayor had been in there because it was like a staging center. Later that evening, because of the situation of the heat, it collapsed, and then another Building 7 collapsed. And then, so on and on it went. Now I will go back to UNF. This is very poignant to me. I went to UNF, and I also was sending money to Park Avenue, and I had a strange United Way Park Avenue. I said, Green, I said, I'm sending money. I sent a couple hundred, maybe 168 or something. I was paying a mortgage. I had, it was out of the blue, so I wasn't wealthy, I was a very frugal person anyway. But anyway, I remember sending money there, and the Catholic Charities, John Hand or something, John Hand, Judge John Hand or something. I don't remember. Anyway, I go to UNF after it's all settling down. And Mr. Matt, I said, well, he said, we're going to write a report about the Security Exchange. I said, the building is gone now. And he just looked crazy looking at me. I said, well, it's gone. The building is gone. Anyway, because the other people had to transfer out of there. Some of the buildings were either damaged or gone. I think the Deutsche Bank, I think they found part of a wheel well and another body up on the top of the Deutsche Bank building. It was like years later. Somebody went up on the roof and couldn't figure out what this debris was, and it turned out it was a wheel well from one of the planes, and also one body was up in there. Anyway, there were pictures of people walking in the dust, people running. The dust would come 32 seconds per second. One woman was outside and some restaurant pulled her in. Some of the firemen had to get underneath their truck as this debris just goes flying by, because once the building collapsed, it was going down, down, down. And then you could see they had pictures of people that were, on Canal Street or near the river. And then they had like 5, 10, 15 miles to make it home. Some of them were walking home and all this, go across the Brooklyn Bridge and all this. And anyway, at UNF, the teachers are laissez-faire, right? They're professors. They had the New York Times, as it was a business area, the business section building. And I got there early because, I'm riding the bus because I don't like to drive. Sometimes I'd even run the track out there, but I had time. And it gave me time to look at my stuff, So they had like a little office mail room. And there's a waste bin. And there's all these New York Times and Washington Post. And I said, this is wasteful. Some of them still have the rubber bands on them. And this is a few days after 9/11. And I was able to get those obituaries, and they were poignant. Some lady was writing those obituaries of all these people, Cantor Fitzgerald, and on and on. I have a list of all the buildings that went down: Windows of the World, Bank of America, Port Authority, just on and on. All kinds of buildings had their headquarters there. All kind of corporate headquarters were in there. Wells Fargo, I think. I don't know what all. Anyway, they had all these buildings. Corporations were in there, and they listed those. But anyway, the poignant things, I would read them on the bus going home. I'd take back 3 of them newspapers, some of the New York and some of the Washington Post. And the professors didn't even care about it. They didn't realize what was in there. And this woman, there was a story about that. She wrote these page-long, poignant things about the people that passed, Catholics, Arabs, his Guatemalans working in the restaurant. One Japanese woman was a tourist in New York, and her family stayed out on the plaza, and then she was going to run into the time you had film cameras, like instant cameras, you'd buy them, and you could take 12 or 24 pictures and then turn the roll in. And she ran into some drugstore as part of it, and, the gas was liquid, and some of the gas was on fire flowing down from the side of the building. And it got her, and I don't know if she survived catastrophic burns. Then I was working at my health club, and there was a physics teacher from high school physics. And he says, well, when the gas hit, and they were loaded planes, the gas hit, he said, if you were above or below that floor, what happens is it consumes all the oxygen. You literally, this is horrible. All of it's horrible. It's all horrific. But he said the gas consumes the oxygen, and therefore, it takes the oxygen right out of your lungs. Your lungs collapse because the fire wants to consume that oxygen. The explosive fire will suck the oxygen out of you. And then they had people saying, oh, the people chose to jump rather than burn. That's a limbic. It's a animal response. If it's so hot and you're burning to death, you jump the window. You're not thinking, oh, your body is trying to get away from the heat. almost like a moth in a lamp. It's not a logical response. Oh, I'll jump out here. It's got to be better than in here. It's not a decision. Because they would talk like, oh, they're making a decision. They're not. It's not a decision. It's a very primitive animal response. It's not a decision you make in your mind. Well, I'd rather do this than that. No. And they had other poignant stories where a rabbi, he happened to work at the Port Authority or something, and he talked for like 20 or 30 minutes to family and friends in the neighborhood. I think he called a neighbor because he couldn't get his wife. And then the neighbor ran and found the wife, and they talked and talked. And it was just getting too hot. He kept saying it was getting too hot in his floor. And they couldn't go. See, where the planes hit about the middle of the building, the people above were basically trapped. And the stairwells, none of those worked. And there was stories about people that were handicapped and, they were having a hard time getting out of the building and stuff. I think they lost about 3,000 people. Anyway, these are my stories. Of course, I read Bob Graham's 9/11 report and various things. I got into it a little bit. But these are from my memories. Thank you.